Welcome to It's the Economy. The Indian government banned the export of rice on July 20th, leading to a sharp rise in rice prices the world over. India accounts for 40% of global rice exports. However, we must note that the export of only non-basmati white rice and earlier broken rice has been banned. These account for about 45% of India's exports. Basmati and parboiled rice exports continue. The reason for the ban, the rice crop is feared to be subpar this year due to excessive rains in the north and late rains in the south. The government wants to ensure food security and food inflation control, especially probably because it's an election year. To discuss the pros and cons of the export ban, more importantly, the course of food inflation for the rest of the year, I have with me the economist who would be foremost informed on it, Dr. Ashok Gulati, Distinguished Professor of Economics at the ICRIER and a former chairman of the Agricultural Prices Commission. Dr. Gulati, thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us. Would you not worry that the export ban was needed? I saw your piece in the Times arguing that the export ban was uncalled for, but you don't worry about the forthcoming rice crop?
Take that into account. You have 3 times the buffer stock norm as on 1st of July. And to start with, the inflation in rice that you are defining is based on 2011 weights of consumption basket. And after that, the Food Security Act was passed in 2013. You are giving free rice and free wheat to more than 800 million people. So you have already protected the more, much more than the vulnerable people, 800 million. When you say in the country poverty is only 15%, and you are giving free rice and wheat to almost 60% of the population. So what are you worried about? Secondly, you have buffer stocks enough, and still the monsoon is unfolding. We don't know as yet. So to me, pressing button right now is somewhat premature.
Okay. Well, I'll persist with this for a little more and then come to the general food inflation questions. The fear also is, Dr. Gulati, that the procurement of rice last year towards the end actually became of kind of questionable quality. There were some economists connected to government, if you please, worrying whether they would even be of a quality that can be put in the PDS. And therefore, while the number is impressive at 3 times the buffer stock norm, perhaps some of it is of questionable quality.
Well, you can say anything of questionable, quality, whether the quality of procurement is there or whether that much of production is there or not. Unless we get a certified statement from the government official on that respect, I really can't comment. The trade estimates on production, particularly for wheat, are very different than what the government says, right? But that's what can create market expectations. But if the government decision has to be taken, it has to be based on certain facts which are reasonably shared. Okay.
So the buffer stock, the FCI rice stocks, as you say, is 41.95. I think your paper said about 41 million tons. And that should suffice. Okay.
That is, even if there is a drought, even then this stock is sufficient. That's the reason, you have a buffer stock norm which takes care of the strategic stocks. And it is way, way above that, 200% above that. What more do you want?
Yes. Yes, you said it is 3 times above the norm. Well, Dr. Gulati, now if we can move to the current state of food and cereal inflation, how do you estimate the rice crop? We were told by, I think I'm quoting Harish Damodaran's paper over here, I think he wrote yesterday or day before in the Indian Express, stating that about 1 lakh hectares of rice crop in Punjab has to be retransplanted because of the excessive rains, and therefore that could be short maturity crop. And there were others who have said that there could be short maturity crop in the south. So is it likely that this time the food harvest in terms of yield could be less?
Fine. If it is less somewhat, although Punjab I don't really doubt about their capacity to produce because it's a 100% irrigated system. So they can come back. But supposing even if 5 million tons, 10 million tons, the crop is down, so what? You have the buffer stocks. That is what it is for.
Okay.
So question is, are we heading for a major drought where the rice production will be 30 million tons down? If it is 3, 5, 7 million tons down, it doesn't matter.
No, I don't think anybody is estimating a drought or even such a excessive fall in crop. But at the moment, looking at the sown area and looking at what we have in terms of data of El Nino likely to hit in August, that was always the forecast. What is your estimate of the rice crop?
Rice area planted as on today is more than last year. Okay. Our procurement has always been way above what we need on rice. So we are overproducing rice, which from the environment angle, I have concerns because producing so much rice in Punjab, Haryana belt is depleting the water table like anything and creating all greenhouse gas emissions. But those are different concerns. The basic point that production may suffer by 5 million tons, let's say even 10 million tons. Nothing is going to happen. You are not going to be starving. Okay, there is no concern on that.
Okay,
so right now, creating a panic in the international markets. Think about in US, Indians are queuing up to take away all the rice from the stores.
Yes. Yeah, it's specifically non-basmati white rice which they consume, and that's why the panic there. But the government has assured that there will be government-to-government exports in African countries, and also in our neighboring SAARC countries, Nepal, Bangladesh. So some ameliorative steps are there. I want to concentrate more on the food inflation in India itself. Do you fear, can we say therefore that by your arithmetic, there isn't likely to be a rice inflation? What about wheat inflation?
I'm saying that first you correct the estimation of wheat and rice inflation.
Of course.
The June data says that the wheat inflation in PDS is 34%. PDS, it is zero price.
Okay.
When it is being given free, where is the 34% inflation in PDS wheat? There is something wrong happening in the weighting diagram there. And then you take a weighted average of the two. There is a non-PDS and there is a PDS. PDS is given at zero price, both wheat and rice. 800 million people, right?
Okay.
And then you have non-PDS, you are not taking a weighted average of the two. When you take a weighted average of the two, it will be very much in a comfortable range.
Okay. But in your piece, you also argue that there is a chance of a wheat inflation and so we may have to import.
Yeah, on the wheat question, because last 2 years, not only this year, but a year before even, the trade does not believe the government data on production. I talked to several big players in the private sector, and they said if the government is saying today 112, 113 million tons of wheat crop, it is not more than 105, 106 million tons.
Okay.
So there is a issue. And in case of wheat, the buffer stock norm and your actual stocks as on 1st July were only 2.5 million tons more than the norm that you need. You were able to procure just to feed the public distribution system. Nicely, no problem on that. So the question is, if the trade doesn't believe your production statistics, then the trade expectations are for there may be a rise in wheat prices, especially if El Nino hits at a later stage and if there is a heat wave or something like that. Now, you can plan for that because even after what Ukraine and Russia and the attack on the port of Ukraine, even after that, the other prices have gone up, the Russian prices. And Russia is today the biggest exporter of wheat, 45 million tons or so. Now, if you can make a deal on crude oil, you can always make a deal on wheat.
Okay.
It was less, their price is less than our MSP. And you have a 40% import duty. Why do you have 40% import duty? Let 5-7 million tons of wheat come in, it will give you a buffer and you can stabilize the prices at the time of election.
I want to rush and ask you another question. Tomato inflation. Actually, ours is not, our food inflation was high in June, and across the board, economists are expecting 6.5% or 6.4% inflation for July. The numbers will come in a few days. Now, what is the answer for this? Of this, about 2% or 2.5 percentage point higher estimation of inflation, 50% or half of it is because of tomatoes. Now, how do you control a food inflation which is so eccentric?
The vegetable prices, this is the time, June, July, especially during rainy season, their prices spike up. So this is not anything new, and it is precisely for controlling these prices. There was an Operation Green. Earlier it was called Operation Top, tomatoes, onion, potatoes, and then it was expanded. It was given to the Ministry of Food Processing basically to stabilize the value chain. Less said the better. It hasn't worked so far. Nobody knows what's happening there in any big way.
What's your estimation?
Create a separate bit.
Okay. Well, what is the estimation? Do you think we are going to live with this tomato inflation all the way up to winter, which is supposed to be the tomato season?
No. I think my estimate is, June inflation of tomato was in minus 34%. But we are crying off July. Those numbers have yet to come. And that inflation will be in 3 digits.
200%, sir. 200%, I'm told.
It can be even harder. So it's in 3 digits. That's what I'm saying. The numbers have to come on 12th. So, but all said and done, our estimate is towards the later half of August, the new crop starts coming from Maharashtra, and September the prices will subside. In fact, last week of August and September, October, they will be under control.
Okay. So your expectation is that food inflation should not be so much of a problem as we enter the festival season?
If you play your cards well, especially because that's the time when the demand peaks up, in the festival time. And wheat, I'm a little concerned. I'm concerned a little bit on the milk sector because they are inflated, and that has a big weight in the overall CPI basket. And if they play the trade policy well, trade policy is not just exports. You can import from one port and export from the other also. That's what trade policy is all about.
Fair.
So my feeling is if you may have to import 5-7 million tons of wheat if you want to be very sure about it.
Okay.
And maybe a bit of butter and skimmed milk powder. There could be a
at least cut the import duty.
Import duty, 15%, they have 60% import duty on skimmed milk powder and 40% on butter. Now, there is a quota which can be brought at 15%. So you can use that. There is no harm in importing when you fear at least inflationary expectations are there.
Okay. All right. We'll have to leave it at that, sir. But you leave us with some confidence that there is a policy space available for importing wheat, and that the tomato crop from Maharashtra and later on from other parts by September should ensure some cooling of this tomatoflation that we are facing. Thank you very much, Dr. Gulati, for joining us and giving us your perspective. We wrap up on Bazaar on the note that the markets are holding on in the green, but just by the skin of the teeth. It looks like an interesting fight between the bulls and the bears that's lined up for you on Chartbusters.